Confronted my boyfriend after meeting his touchy work wife, and I'm questioning if I should still accept his proposed engagement. I've been with my boyfriend, Jake, for 5 years, and he's been at his current job for 3 of those years. For most of that time, I'd never met any of his coworkers in person. He sometimes mentioned Amy, saying he'd do her a lot of favors, fixing her car, going over to her house to repair things, that sort of thing. It never worried me because Jake told me all his coworkers were much older than him. I took it at face value. But one night, while Jake was sound asleep, his phone kept ringing over and over. His guy friend just wouldn't stop calling. I answered, half asleep myself, and told him Jake was sleeping, and so was I, so please, stop calling. As I was putting the phone down, I happened to notice 5 unread text notifications from Amy. I realized some of the other spam notifications were also from her. One text from Amy jumped out at me. "Great Jake, now everyone thinks we are fucking." The message made my skin crawl. The very next day, when Jake came home from work, I couldn't keep quiet about it. I asked him directly about the texts. He told me that both he and Amy had been late for work that morning, so the others probably just made a joke about them, and that this was Amy joking around, nothing more. I found it incredibly unprofessional and told him as much, voicing my discomfort. Instead of easing my mind, he invited me to join him and his coworkers at a bar that night, assuring me I could meet Amy and see for myself that there was nothing to worry about. That night did nothing to calm my nerves. In fact, it left me feeling sick. Amy turned out to only be 3 years older than Jake, and she was gorgeous. All through the evening, she was draped all over Jake, touching him, leaning on him, putting his arms around her, even kissing him on the cheek, as if it were all perfectly normal. The two of them kept teasing each other and bantering, like middle schoolers flirting for the first time. When I tried to talk to Amy, she told me she loves him like a brother, then proceeded to tell me she slept with half her coworkers, and even bragged that she got the next morning off work because she sent another coworker nudes in exchange for covering her shift. I sat there in disbelief. Later, Amy ended up sobbing at the bar about how lonely she was and how she just wanted someone to love her, real, mascara-running tears. Jake ended up comforting her, acting like this was all totally normal. I felt completely lost. Their interactions were so inappropriate, but if I asked Jake to cut her off, it would be impossible. They worked together, on the same unit. I felt disgusted knowing this had been happening for the couple of years she'd worked there, right under my nose. How could I possibly set boundaries when they have to see each other every single day at work, often for long stretches? The thing that really threw me into confusion was that at the bar, Amy wasn't just touchy with Jake, she was touchy with me, too. She hugged me, kissed me on the cheek, and acted overly affectionate to me, even though it was our first time meeting. It honestly made me question my own sanity. Was this just how she interacted with everyone, or was I being irrationally jealous? I didn't want to turn into that crazy, paranoid girlfriend, but no one else in the group seemed at all fazed. They all treated her behavior as if it was completely ordinary. I just sat there, dumbfounded. I know some people are just naturally touchy and affectionate, and she was certainly pouring it on thick that night, but it made me wonder if my instincts were off base. I didn't want to embarrass myself by reacting emotionally if she really was just an affectionate person. Jake and I have lived together almost our entire relationship, 3 years in our own house together now. He once told me he was ready to get engaged, but I asked to wait until I'd finished my degree. He was fine with that, and even bought me an engagement ring after we picked some out last year. I'm supposed to graduate in a year, and we'd been planning for him to propose on a trip we're taking right after. But now, after seeing what he's like with Amy, I honestly don't know what I want anymore. Somehow, Amy's behavior seemed so over the top, even bordering on fake. She cracked constant sexual jokes, not just with Jake but with everyone. She'd say things like Jake must have a huge D because there's no way someone as pretty as me would be with him otherwise, told me she'd steal me from him, and, when I complained about my job, even suggested I should come work with them. Every time a new coworker arrived at the bar, Amy would wave them over, introducing me as Jake's girlfriend. Isn't she pretty? The other coworkers' reactions were just as weird, blank, unenthusiastic, as though this was an obviously forced display. Sitting there, I just couldn't tell, was Amy laying it on thick to convince me she and Jake weren't a thing, or was she trying to bring me into her social circle as one of the girls? Looking back, I think it was the former. Jake and Amy work security at a factory. Jake always said most of the shift is just watching cameras. He spends a lot of time playing games on his phone. Amy, on the other hand, confessed at the bar that she's had sex with coworkers in the boiler room, and another one in a closet. Only one of the guys she'd slept with was actually at the bar that night, and Jake even made a joke, asking him if he'd be going home with Amy during her dramatic breakdown. The guy just laughed and told Jake, hell no. By the end of the night, we ended up dropping Amy off at some other guy's house, because that's where she wanted to go. For a brief moment, I even considered the possibility of trying to befriend Amy. She was genuinely sweet to me, hugged me, called me pretty, acted like she wanted to be close. But in the back of my mind, it felt like she was just the kind of person who'd drag everyone else into her messes if I let her. Especially when I saw her break down at the bar, I felt sad for her, honestly, like being promiscuous was her way of trying to ease her loneliness. But the over-the-top antics made it hard to know what was real and what wasn't. She was even sending sexual jokes to their boss that night while drunk, things like, "I've decided if you give us all a Christmas bonus I'll give you a surprise." Apparently the boss thought it was hilarious. Whatever is going on with the management, it's just as weird. Now, after all I've seen and heard, I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to just walk away from a 5-year relationship without at least trying to talk this out with Jake. But if he can't understand the boundaries I need, or refuses to respect them, then I'll have no choice but to reconsider whether this relationship has a future. He doesn't seem to care. He does this for his other coworkers, too, and they return the favor. For example, one of his coworkers, a woman around 50, brought her boyfriend over to help us fix our boiler. In return, he's gone to their place to help them haul firewood and things like that. I honestly thought Amy was closer to their age, that she was older, so I assumed he was just lending a hand to someone who needed it. I didn't realize it was something I should be worrying about until I actually met her in person. So thank you to everyone who's given me advice and support so far. I agree with a lot of the suggestions I've received. Right now, he's asleep, he has work in the morning, and it's late where we live. But when he gets home from work tomorrow, I've decided I'm going to have an honest conversation with him. I'll tell him which behaviors I found disrespectful, explain exactly why they made me uncomfortable, and ask him to set clear boundaries with Amy. I'm planning to ask him to send her a straightforward message, in writing, saying he feels uncomfortable with those things and telling her to stop, so I can see it myself and know for certain he actually did it. The most important thing will be to watch how he reacts to all of this. If he's understanding and agrees to set and enforce those boundaries, I'm planning to trust him and give things another shot. I'll even have him invite his coworkers out again in a month or so, just so I can observe firsthand how they interact at the bar and see whether they're really respecting the new boundaries. But if he gets defensive or starts to argue about it when I ask, well, that will probably be my sign that it's better for me to move on. Update 1. It's been a wild ride lately, and I'm honestly not sure if anyone would even remember my story after all this time, but so much has happened that I just have to share. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who gave me advice. It meant a lot to know so many people took the time to read what I was going through. I never thought things would spiral or get as much attention as they did. There were some questions people kept asking, so let me clear up a few details before I get into everything that happened. My boyfriend, Jake, once told me that all his coworkers were a lot older than him, but that conversation happened months ago, about some other coworkers entirely. Now that I think about it, it made sense why he never bothered mentioning the one exception, Amy, since she wasn't relevant at the time. He was just making a generalization. Now, about the update. I did end up talking to Jake, but finding the right moment was harder than I expected. Right after everything blew up, we got invited on a last-minute trip with some friends, and the timing just never felt right. Eventually, while we were alone in the hotel, I finally brought it all up. I laid everything out for him, how those behaviors made me feel, how uncomfortable it was to watch Amy act like that and to feel like there was more going on than I understood. Jake said he actually wanted to talk about it too but wasn't sure how to start, since neither of us brought it up when we got home that night. I was so emotionally drained, I just went straight to bed. Jake admitted that Amy's behavior at the bar completely caught him off guard. He said that while she'd drop some odd comments every now and then at work, she'd never physically done anything before that night. He even mentioned that he talked to their other female coworker afterward. He told her how uncomfortable he felt with Amy's behavior at the bar, and she completely agreed. She manages the schedule and actually told him that she wouldn't schedule him with Amy anymore. Looking back, there was something about Amy always bragging about sleeping with different men and sending them pictures, which I took as major flirting or signaling to Jake that she was down for anything. To me, it felt like she was basically saying, "I'm interested, especially in you." But Jake saw it differently. He thought Amy was just like that with everyone, and honestly, he considered it her way of saying she wasn't interested in him personally. He said it felt like when you mention your girlfriend or boyfriend to signal you're taken, nothing more. During our talk, Jake made it clear he loved me, that I was the only person he wanted, and he apologized for not resolving this sooner. He said he just froze at the bar, not knowing how to react when he realized how Amy was acting, and he promised nothing would ever happen with Amy, or anyone like her, for that matter. He even called her promiscuity and emotional instability something that turned him off completely. Jake's theory was that Amy acted out so aggressively that night because I was there, that she lashed out for attention or something. But he swore nothing like that ever happened before. He even showed me texts from his coworker confirming that he wouldn't be scheduled with Amy moving forward, and for a while, I felt a huge sense of relief. That is, until Jake came to me, saying he wanted to talk. Despite the schedule change, Amy started switching shifts with other people, just to end up working with Jake again. It was so relentless and uncomfortable that Jake decided to start applying for other jobs. It kind of stunned me when he told me he'd been accepted into a field technician position at a new place. I'll keep the name private for his sake. He put in his 2 weeks at the old job, and now he's almost done, just 1 week left. Knowing that he's going into a new field that actually interests him, for better pay, and without Amy in the picture, I feel like we can finally breathe. It's been a huge relief, and honestly, I'm happy with where things are heading. Jake and I have been having a lot of honest conversations about communication, setting better boundaries, and being clear with each other, even when it feels awkward. I know a lot of people would have preferred if I ended the relationship right then and there, but with everything that happened and where we are now, I genuinely feel good about Jake and me. We're stronger for it, and I'm grateful for all the advice, support, and even the criticism that pushed me to look at things from a different angle. And just as a funny aside, before Jake and I were officially dating, after our first kiss, he confessed that he actually had no idea if I liked him romantically or if we were just close friends. Meanwhile, I was thinking, seriously? I'd been sleeping in your bed for 3 nights, we'd play wrestle, I baked homemade cornbread because you said it was your favorite, I'd hug and touch you all the time. How much more obvious could I have been? Sometimes, guys are just so oblivious, it's honestly hilarious. So, for now, things are looking up for us, and I'm happier than I have been in a long time. Update 2. It started with a screenshot I didn't expect to see. The coworker who manages their schedule DM'd me a photo from Amy's close friend's story. Amy in the factory hallway in the standard gray security hoodie with the caption, "He's mad at me RN but he'll get over it." The timestamp was during a shift she'd switched into so she could be on with Jake. I recognized the hallway because I've picked him up there. It made my stomach drop. It wasn't his hoodie, it was the one they all share, but it looked like she'd chosen that on purpose. The scheduler sent me another message, "I'm sorry." I told her to knock it off. She's been swapping shifts behind my back. I showed Jake and he just stared at the screen for a long second, like the picture finally connected the dots for him that this wasn't just she's like this with everyone. He texted Amy, told her to stop, told her not to switch onto his shifts again, and told her to take the post down. Her first reply was 2 laughing emojis and, "It's literally a joke." Then another, "You're being weird since your GF came around." Then she called him 3 times back to back. He didn't pick up. When he told the scheduler and their supervisor what he'd said, the supervisor pulled both of them into the office. That's when it turned into something bigger than just awkward. Apparently there'd been complaints from other people in the unit, and one of the older guys mentioned a group chat that had been going on after hours, memes, trash talk, jokes. Amy was in it. The supervisor was in it. So were 2 other men. It was the kind of culture where anyone could say anything as long as they laughed afterward. Someone had finally sent the thread to HR because it included a clip of Amy on the shop floor kissing a different coworker on the cheek during a fire drill and the supervisor commenting something like, "If you all keep morale up like this, I'm putting in for bonuses." I didn't see the chat myself, but HR did. 2 nights before Jake was supposed to be done, there was a mandatory 3rd shift evacuation drill. Everyone rushed outside into the cold. Amy peeled off toward the guard shack, where Jake was posted, and tried to go inside. He shut the door and told her to wait with her team. According to him, she started crying out there on the pavement, loud enough that people turned to look. He called the supervisor on the radio, asked for someone else to come get her because he didn't want to be the one to handle it. She got escorted back to the group and he stayed inside the shack feeling like a lightning rod. When he got home that morning he handed me his badge and said, "I'm done going along to get along. I'm telling HR everything." He wrote a clean, straightforward statement about the schedule switches, the physical boundaries at the bar, the messages, and the fact that he'd asked her to stop. He told them he was leaving but he didn't feel right pretending it hadn't happened. The next day, it felt like dominoes. HR called him to say they were placing his supervisor on leave while they reviewed conduct in supervisory communications. Amy got suspended pending investigation. Several people were interviewed, including the scheduler and the older guy who'd been in that group chat. Jake turned in his equipment and they paid out the rest of his week. He walked out of that building midday, in the sun, without a single goodbye. The relief on his face didn't even look like the guy I'd been arguing with in my head for the past month. It looked like the guy I met when we were 20. I wish I could say that was the end, but that night my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Amy. I listened with my thumb hovering over delete. She sounded wrecked. She said she knew I hated her, that she was just stupid and lonely, that she never slept with Jake, that she was playing a part because everybody there is sick, it's all a joke until HR shows up. She said she was sorry for me seeing anything, sorry for the bar, sorry for the texts. She also said, "You won, okay?" He left. I don't have anyone now. The next morning there was a small grocery store bouquet on our porch with a note tucked into the plastic. "I liked you. I'm sorry. I put it in the trash and felt awful anyway." 2 days later Jake started his new job. He came home dirty and grinning, talking about climbing around a plant room with a guy who actually taught him things instead of distracting him with nonsense. That night we sat on the couch and went through his phone together. He blocked Amy's number and archived everything. We didn't do it like a ritual or a punishment. It felt practical, like putting away Christmas lights in September because you forgot and keep tripping over the box. One more thing happened that made me feel both sick and certain we'd done the right thing. The scheduler, the same woman who gave Jake the no Amy shifts, asked if she could grab coffee with me on her day off. I said yes. She's older, the one who had her boyfriend fix our boiler. She looked bone-tired. She said she'd been there long enough to watch the place slide, and what I saw at the bar wasn't new so much as the loudest version of what people had been getting away with. She told me point blank that she stopped scheduling Jake with Amy not because she believed they were sleeping together, but because she believed that if she didn't, someone was going to get hurt in a way you can't walk back from. An accident on a night when somebody was crying and somebody else was trying to be nice and was busy instead of watching the cameras. This place eats people, she said, stirring her tea. You two got out. I walked home from that coffee thinking about the first time I doubted myself, how small and crazy that made me feel. It felt different now. Not vindicated, exactly. Just clear. There's a difference between jealousy and your instincts trying to protect you from a bad ecosystem. We booked our trip again for after my graduation. The ring is still hidden in the house somewhere, he won't tell me where. He said he's sticking to his plan. I believe him. For the first time in months, when my phone buzzes late at night, I don't freeze. I look over and it's just him, sending me a photo of a sunset from a rooftop, or a blurry dog he saw on a lunch break, or a terrible pun. It's boring in the best possible way. And that feels a little bit like winning, too. Update 3. I thought the chapter had closed until Jake's new boss stuck his head into the plant room and asked, "Hey, do you know a guy named Mark?" We don't say real names here, but Mark was Jake's old supervisor, the one who got put on leave. His new boss played a voicemail on speaker. It was Mark, slurry and charged, saying Jake had abandoned posts, started drama, and was the reason a good worker got suspended. It was the kind of message that's supposed to sound official and just ends up sounding like the guy who sent it is trying to start a bar fight with a dial tone. Jake went very still. His new boss watched him like he was deciding what kind of person he'd hired. Then he said, "For the record, our policy is dates and titles only for references. Whatever that is, it's not our problem, but I thought you should hear it." He forwarded the voicemail to Jake and HR. Jake sent it to the old company's HR with one line, "I believe this is retaliation." They wrote back within 20 minutes and asked for permission to use the recording in their investigation. He gave it. 2 days later, the scheduler texted me, "You're not going to hear this from them yet, but he's gone. They told us they found policy violations in supervisory communications and he won't be returning." The way she wrote it, flat and tired, made it sound like one of those moments where an entire building exhales without meaning to. The investigator called me after that. She was external, not the same HR woman who'd sounded exhausted on the phone last time. We did the whole thing on Zoom. She asked me to tell her about the bar and about the night of the drill. I told her exactly what I saw, and what Jake told me, and I didn't dress anything up to be more dramatic than it was. I sent her the screenshot of the close friend's story with the hoodie. I sent her a picture of the note from the bouquet because, apparently, I take photos of everything before I throw it out. She said, "Thank you. This gives us a timeline." It was clinical and gentle at the same time, like a nurse setting a broken finger. I didn't expect to see Amy again. I didn't plan to. But small towns do what small towns do, and I ran into her anyway, middle aisle at the cheap grocery store, both of us, holding the same brand of pasta like a sitcom. She looked different, hair darker, sweatshirt clean, no eyelashes so dramatic they created their own weather. I started to turn my card away and she said my name in a voice so low I had to read her lips to be sure. "I'm not going to cause a scene," she said, and she didn't. She kept her hands on the cart like it was an anchor. "I'm in the program," she added, and watched my face for it to mean anything. They made it a condition to come back, and I took it. "I'm not asking you to forgive me." I didn't say anything for a beat too long. She filled it like she always fills everything. "I gave them the chat," she said. "All of it. He told me it would make me look worse, and maybe it does, but that place," she stopped and pressed her lips together, like she'd learned not to give people sound bites. "I got a warning instead of fired. They offered me a transfer. Nights were killing me." I told her I was glad she was getting help. It felt small, but it was true. She nodded, once, grateful and embarrassed at the same time, and then she did something that finally made all the noise in my head go quiet. "They were betting," she said. "Not money. Just bragging rights. Who I'd pick next. That's why it got louder when you showed up. I thought if I owned it, if I leaned into the joke, I could control it. I didn't." She glanced down at the pasta, laughed at herself without humor, and moved past me. "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time it didn't feel like a line. It felt like a thing she says every day now and means. That night Jake and I sat at the kitchen table with the window open and the kind of dusk that turns the whole street blue. He didn't ask for details I wasn't ready to give. He listened when I told him what she'd said about the bets and the leaning into something that eats you. He put his hand over mine and we didn't say anything profound. We didn't have to. The official letter came the following week, addressed to Jake but also copied to anyone who'd given a statement. It didn't say names. It said outcomes. Remedial training, policy revision, disciplinary action up to and including termination, no contact directives. It read like corporate sedation, but I recognized the bones under it. The group chat policy went from don't be inappropriate on company time to do not include supervisors in personal group chats, do not use company devices or discuss personnel off shift, violations will be treated as harassment. The scheduler texted me a picture of the new training slide where it actually spelled out unwanted physical contact during off-hours events, like they'd copied it from someone's bad night and made it into bullet points for the next new hire. One more thing happened and I only understood how much it mattered when it was over. Jake's new company got a request for employment verification on a background report, standard stuff. Buried at the bottom was a box checked by the old company's corporate office, eligible for rehire, yes. It was bland and perfect. No backhanded comments, no little digs. Jake stared at it like it was an apology written in a dialect only HR speaks. And then life, inexorably, kept moving. I graduated. He took the day off and stood in the back row of the field house with my dad, both of them doing that thing where men pretend to cough when they're about to cry. We drove out to the lake after, the one he likes because the pylons look like giant chess pieces sticking out of the water. He brought a picnic in the cooler and I laughed at him because he'd cut the sandwiches into triangles like a kindergarten teacher. At some point he went, "Hey, can you grab the napkins?" And I lifted the lid and there was a ring sitting on top of a roll of paper towels like a tiny planet on a white moon. He didn't make a speech. He just said my name in the way that makes me feel like the room's gone quiet, even when it's not. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We sat there with our feet dangling over the water while the sun did that thing with the sky that looks like someone spilled peach juice over it, and it wasn't big or flashy or shareable. It felt like coming home. We still get late-night texts, but they're from his new boss asking if anyone wants to split a Costco run for wire ties. He still sends me blurry dogs from rooftops. I put my phone face down more often now, not as a test or a boundary, just because I forget it's there. The old badge is in a drawer with our mismatched screws and those weird IKEA tools you keep even though you'll never use them again. Every now and then I open that drawer looking for something else and see it, and it's like spotting a shark tooth in the sand. You can forget the ocean's there until you don't. We booked the trip. He keeps saying he's going to teach me how to use a drill and then forgets because we start cooking, or kissing, or arguing about whether the grocery store brand of cornbread mix is as good as mine. He pretends it is. He's wrong, it's boring in the best possible way, and when I look back at the night in the bar and the gray hoodie and the asphalt and the HR emails, I don't feel vindicated or righteous. I feel like someone who listened to herself, and to the person she loves, and then did the next right thing, and then the next. That feels like the craziest miracle of all. Update 4. The letter came with a green slip I had to sign for and a return address that made my stomach do that elevator drop. State Labor Board, not a name, not a person. Jake sliced it open with a butter knife while I stood next to the sink pretending to rinse a glass. Subpoena isn't a word you expect to see with your coffee. They wanted testimony and records for an investigation into hostile supervisory communications and off-shift harassment at his old plant. There was a list of dates I recognized like bruises on a timeline and 3 names I knew already. The 4th one was new. Corporate counsel from headquarters. It felt like the grown-ups had finally come home. The deposition wasn't in a courtroom. It was in a conference room with carpet that tried to be beige and ended up the color of wet bread. There were those little triangle water cups that collapse if you think too hard about them. A woman with an external badge introduced herself like she introduced herself 100 times a week and still managed to make it sound like we weren't just another set of stories she was going to have to put in a binder. I wasn't there as a witness for him, technically, but they let me sit in the lobby with my headphones and a view of a fake ficus in a pot an office manager had dusted that morning and felt proud about. Amy walked in wearing an oatmeal sweater and jeans that looked like they actually fit a life that goes home at night. No lashes. Hair pulled back like she was keeping it out of a sink. The woman with her wasn't a lawyer, she had a clipboard and those soft hands people have when they touch hard things all day, nurses, social workers. Amy saw me and froze, then did this little chin-up that I recognized from every time she's decided to turn a thing into a performance. Except she didn't perform. She walked over, stopped a comfortable 2 arm lengths away, and said, "I'm not supposed to talk to you." Then she looked down at her shoes and said, "I wrote a letter they told me not to give you. I can't learn anything if I keep trying to skip the hard parts, so I'm not going to. I just wanted to say I'm sorry with my mouth and not with a bouquet." It wasn't a speech. It was the opposite of a speech. She didn't cry. Her caseworker put a hand on her elbow when the door opened and she went in without looking back. I sat very still and realized I had been waiting for a scene in a hallway and what I got instead was a boundary. Mark showed up late, red around the eyes like he'd run a yellow light and lost. Different tie, same neck. His lawyer had a briefcase that looked like it had belonged to someone else first. He clocked me and did that joke of a smirk people do when they want you to know they think they're winning. They went into the room all important and then, 15 minutes later, the court reporter came out for new paper looking like she'd just watched a raccoon go through a dog door. Jake says he kept his answers boring on purpose, dates, times, to the best of my recollection. The voicemail played on a loop until the cheap lawyer asked if they could take a break and the external counsel said, very friendly, "We can go straight through if you'd like." When Jake walked out, his jaw had that set to it that it gets when he carries something heavy by himself and then remembers he doesn't have to. We went to the diner next door because I needed something that came on a plate big enough to hold all the things I couldn't say out loud yet. The pie tasted like freezer burn and sugar. A waitress in a sun visor called me sweetie and refilled my coffee until it hit my bloodstream like an apology I didn't ask for. A week later the email from corporate HR slid into his inbox with the kind of politeness that makes you feel steadier just reading it. They thanked him for his cooperation. They said the investigation was concluding. They asked permission to use portions of his anonymized statement in training materials. There was a line about preventative outcomes that I didn't understand until the scheduler texted me that night. A contractor tried to re-enter during a hot work lockout. Amy was on the opposite side of the badge reader. She put her body in the door and her foot on the floor and told him no 3 times. The new shift lead backed her up instead of laughing. The guy cursed and stomped off, and then, 10 minutes later, his buddy found him outside the line with a cigarette and a red face, and nobody got hurt. The scheduler sent me a blurry photo of the laminated new sign on the guard shack glass. No contact at off-site events, now in bold, group chats addressed in actual words. It looked dumb and plain. It looked like something that might actually protect a person when their voice shakes. The strangest part was the last little square at the bottom of a background check from a company Jake has never worked for. Eligible for rehire, yes. No little knives hidden in the phrasing, no, not recommended. Just the kind of quiet sentence that means if you meet me at a barbecue and ask about him, nobody gets to sabotage the way you hear his name. He took a screenshot and stared at it like a man reading his own permission slip. In the middle of all that, the scheduler called and said she'd put in for a dispatch job at Jake's new place because she was done being the person who holds a broken schedule together with tape and early bedtimes. She came in for an interview in a blouse that didn't belong to the plant and came out with a new badge clipped to a lanyard that didn't smell like coolant. I watched her walk through our front door with a store-bought cake and a face that had the edges sanded down and thought, this is what it looks like when a person turns a corner and makes a different right instead of the same wrong. We did something stupid and normal then. We went to one of those wedding expos even though we already know we want something small. There were too many white tablecloths and a man selling chair covers like they were life insurance. Jake made a face at a tower of cupcakes that looked like they'd faint if you breathed too hard on them. Then I heard a laugh I recognized as the sound that woke me up the night everything started. His friend from months ago, the one with the bad timing. He was working the DJ booth, grinning like a retriever in a bow tie. He shouted Jake's name like we were long-lost cousins and tugged on a headphone ear and said, "I owe you, man. I put you down as a reference and somebody actually called." It was so stupid and circular and exactly the kind of thing you get in a small town where the same 5 people take turns wearing different hats. We booked him for 3 hours and told him no line dances. He said he'd play the clean versions and then winked. I told him I'd bring a spray bottle. And because life can't resist symmetry, I saw Amy one more time where I didn't expect to. Not the grocery store. The clinic. I was there for a routine shot. She was there with a paper bag and a pamphlet. She lifted her hand in a little wave that wasn't meant to start anything. I made my amends in the room where I was supposed to, she said softly, more to the nurse than to me, and that felt exactly right. She didn't ask about the wedding. I didn't ask about the transfer. She told the receptionist her new hours were days now and she was trying to learn what to do with evenings. We stood 6 feet apart and it wasn't a standoff. It was 2 people who'd lived through the same weather system and were checking the forecast. We got one more letter on letterhead that made me exhale in a way I didn't realize I'd been holding. The old company sent a notice to all witnesses with outcomes written in corporate. The phrases were still oatmeal, policy revision, mandatory training, termination confirmed, transfer approved, but tucked into the middle of it was a sentence that felt like closing a window. Retaliatory communications by former supervisory staff violated company policy and will not be tolerated. It's not poetry. It's a lock clicking. The rest has been quiet enough to hear knives on a cutting board and birds at 4 a.m. We toured a venue we can afford and decided not to book it because the air smelled like basement and my grandmother's going to tell everyone it makes her knees hurt. Jake taught me how to use a drill and then I made him hold the stud finder to his chest and tell him he's the only stud I care about until he groaned and kissed me anyway. He comes home dirty and happy, and I wash his hands at the sink like he's a mechanic in a movie because it feels like a thing people who love each other do. Sometimes he sends me a picture from a roof of a USPS truck shaped like a little loaf of bread and I laugh at my desk and realize I didn't check the sender first. Sometimes the drawer with the old badge sticks and I have to yank it and I see it flash and then disappear again under the IKEA hex keys we will never throw away. There's no moral to any of this that fits on a sign. We didn't fix a place. We didn't fix a person. We didn't turn a messy bar into a church. We just asked for better and then kept asking, and then we let boring be a miracle. Last night the power flickered during a storm and for a second the whole house felt like a held breath, and then everything hummed back to life, and I reached for his hand without thinking. He squeezed back, and neither of us looked at the door. That feels like the craziest part of all.